No way that this could be real, as this creature reached its hand out over my sister's chest and a blue mist came out. I remember just screaming for my mom and my dad.
I lived next to a pretty big military base, and airplanes were always coming and going. However, it suddenly expanded and then shrunk back down to its original size, then zoomed off almost like a shooting star.
14 years ago, my family and I lived in a converted apartment for a mental health facility. At the time, my son was 3 and used to get nightly visitors in his room that would bother him daily.
Welcome, class. I'm your host, Mr. Zach Schlager. Alongside me, my cohort in all things supernatural, Mr. Joel Jackson, and you are tuned in to Beyond the Bell podcast.
Are you thirsty for more ghost stories, alien encounters, and tales from the other side? Make sure you're part of the Beyond the Bell community.
Class, it's important that you click subscribe on our Facebook channel and join our Facebook group. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. All links to these accounts are provided in the video's description box. Uncover the uncanny and delve deeper into the paranormal with us.
Do you have a spine-tingling tale of the paranormal or an unexplained event in your school or education field? Maybe an extraterrestrial encounter or a mysterious creature sighting, or perhaps you have a compelling conspiracy theory?
We at Beyond the Bell, we want to hear from you, especially if your story involves teachers, schools, children diagnosed with autism or any type of learning differences or developmental disabilities. Do not let your story remain untold. Reach out to us on our vast social media platforms. The links to these are on our website, beyondthebellpodcast.org, or you can email us directly at joel.jackson@beyondthebellpodcast.org. We cannot wait to hear about your experience.
Finally, join us in shaping the future beyond the bell. This isn't just a podcast, but a family that Zach, myself, and you are part of. Every penny you donate contributes directly to the production of high-quality content for all of us to enjoy. To donate, simply go to beyondthebellpodcast.org and click on Donate at the top. You can also find the link to our GoFundMe in this video's description.
Cough, teacher salary. Help us out.
Yeah, help us out. All right, we're live.
We're live. Welcome back, class, to part 2 of Mr. Joel Jackson's experiences. If you're just joining us, we are working backwards from his college life back, to early childhood?
Early childhood.
Through college. Awesome. So if you're listening to this, pause here, go back, watch the previous episode. We have it on video as well on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channels.
Yeah, and the reason we're starting backwards is because I have a lot more personal experiences during this time period rather than the one I just told you guys in our last episode about the haunted schools. And my story begins in 2000, and my family had just purchased this really beautiful piece of property. It was a ranch in south central Oklahoma. And in terms of the layout of the property, it was really long. It wasn't very deep back, but it stretched out for a long ways. And down the middle was this beautiful, huge plateau, and it was the highest point in the surrounding county. And on the far left side, there was, next to the road, a really old church. And it was a Seventh-day Adventist church. It was probably built in the 50s or 60s, and it was abandoned. And we restored that and turned it into a venue.
Nice.
And we had weddings there. My sister got married there. But on the far eastern side, where the majority of my stories took place, was an old cemetery that dated back to before Oklahoma's estate. And the way that was, and we technically didn't own the cemetery. The county owned the cemetery. However, we owned all the land surrounding it and the only road leading to it. So we had control of the gate leading to the cemetery. And the previous owners never took care of it, and the county never took care of it, so it had been completely overgrown with thorn bushes and shrubs, and it was really neglected. And a lot of the headstones in there from really beautiful Freemason tombstones, but the majority of them were just rebar rods stuck in the ground, or rocks literally the size of your hand.
Gotcha.
And so all those tombstones, they're covered up by all these thorn briars and all these trees, so you really couldn't see anything. And as soon as we purchased the property, and I think in the first spring break, me and my family decided to clear it out. And my dad was hyping us up and saying, hey, we're the first guys to take care of this cemetery in so many years. And he was just motivating us. And we're like, we come out there with weed eat your lawn with and a lawnmower. And we were just totally outmanned and outgunned.
Oh, wow.
And it's like in Holes, that one scene where that one lady's like digging holes with her grandpa. And she's like, I'm tired of this, Grandpa. That's too damn bad. And so it goes from like really fun and like being a fun united family, and we're all getting tired. And during this time period, we're weed eating. And whenever you weed eat, the string gets cut down. And you have to replace it with needle nose pliers. Mm-hmm. So we had 5 sets of these pliers. And we're going through these pieces of twine really quick. And all of a sudden, we're losing pliers. And my dad's getting upset. You guys got to put the pliers back in the same spot when you're done with them. Me, my brothers, and sister, we don't want to agitate my dad even more than he already is, because he was just like, we weren't having a good day. And so we didn't want to make him mad, and so, okay, we're putting him on the pliers. By the end of the day, we didn't have any pliers. And we still worked on cleaning out that cemetery throughout the spring break, but we eventually realized we couldn't do it. So my dad hired a professional clearing crew to come out and clear out this cemetery. And while they were clearing out, they realized, hey, there's a lot of unmarked stuff, and we don't know what's a tombstone, what's not. You need to hire a professional guy to come out. So I think we got some like historian from like OSU to come out, and he had a ground-penetrating radar machine. Okay. And it looked like a big box, and he would just push it across the cemetery, and it would send radar down to the ground. And wherever a grave was dug, it bounced back. Okay. And while the crew was clearing out the cemetery, they find, not in a pile, but scattered within like a 7-foot radius, a whole bunch of pliers. And it was really weird. And to be honest, it could have been my brother playing a prank or just intentionally trying to get out of work by taking all the pliers so we couldn't do anything.
Brothers do that.
In that general area, one of the historians found 2 unmarked graves.
Interesting.
So that's my first paranormal experience there. But again, I'm 70% sure it's probably one of my brothers hiding the pliers. But that's just an interesting story. And later on, my mother, she was a teacher for many years, a kindergarten teacher, and she loved pioneer history and Western history.
Shout out to the teachers, man. Shout out holding it down.
Especially those kindergarten teachers.
Those kindergarten teachers, man. They're something else.
And she absolutely loved the Laura Ingalls Wilder Little House on the Prairie book series. Did you ever read any of those books?
I probably did. I just don't remember. I know of Little House on the Prairie TV show, right? Grew up with that. Nostalgic gem. Kind of dating myself there, but
my mom, she would read every night sections of each book to us. And she loved reading 2 stories in particular. One of them was from The Long Winter. Okay. And each story dealt with what's called a one-room schoolhouse. And in The Long Winter, Laura Ingalls and her family, they were living in South Dakota. And that year was known as like the Great Blizzard of 1860 through 1860. And what happened was they had back-to-back blizzards throughout the whole year, starting in early October up until May. And this town was like located in the middle of nowhere. So there wasn't a lot of access to it. And these blizzards cut them off from everybody. The first blizzard happened like in October, and Laura at this time was teaching at a one-room schoolhouse. It was pretty good weather, and a lot of her students, they didn't have any shoes. Again, she has like 30 students ranging from like kindergarten to high school.
Okay, yeah.
And the storm hits, and Laura has to like decide whether, okay, are we going to wait out this storm at this schoolhouse or
walk to the nearest house?
And if we stay in the schoolhouse, we're eventually going to run out of fuel. And so he leads them. It wasn't like really long. It was like 200 or 300 yards to the nearest house. But again, in a blizzard, you can't tell.
Yeah.
And so what happens, and she gets lost, and then eventually they find their way back. But it was just like a scary time. And then I can't imagine as a teacher trying to lead those kids through a blizzard with no shoes, nothing. I can barely get my kids lined up in the door.
I'm going to say, I can't even really lead mine to the cafeteria in a straight, organized line, much less in the elements with no shoes.
Yeah. And so she loved telling me that story. But another story I loved that dealt with the one-room schoolhouse was, I think it was called Farmer Boy. And this one book was about her husband's childhood. And he lived in a city, and he was finally of age to go to school at the local town. They had a school, and they had a school teacher. However, they had an issue with the school. They had a classroom management issue, so to say. They had a group of like young boys that were rowdy, and
Typical.
And they beat up the 3 previous teachers to the point that they couldn't teach, so they could get out of school.
It's one way. That is one way to solve it. That's one way to solve it.
They would like the previous teacher, Alonso, was worried that he wouldn't be able to go to school for the rest of the year because these kids would beat up the new teacher coming. And so Alonso's father secretly goes up and talks to the teacher, and he gives him like a bullwhip. And then on his first day, and then during the first day, the kids start making some ruckus, intentionally trying to like rattle them up. And the teacher doesn't respond. He says, "Gentlemen, just come speak with me after school," when everyone leaves. After school comes and all the kids leave, and they come back, and they're walking down the aisles to jump them. And right before they get to the desk, he pulls out the bullwhip and starts whipping them to the point they run out. And that's when the story my mom told me about. But she loved these stories about one-room schoolhouses, and she knew everything about them. And so it was her dream to acquire a schoolhouse somewhere and relocate it to the ranch. And she eventually found this one that was like extremely run down, but it was in north central Oklahoma, in this really small town of Hunter, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And we drive out there on Christmas break with all my cousins, and we're in a caravan of 3 cars, and my mom doesn't know this lady. She didn't know we were coming, and my mom just pulls up, and she started knocking on the door. And my mom has this extremely friendly Texas accent and personality, and she can talk to anybody. Mm-hmm. And she knocks on the door, and the lady who owned that place opens it, and my mom introduces herself. She explains her background and says, "Hey, I'd like to purchase your school." And the lady said, "Why do you want that old thing for? I just called the fire department to burn it down."
Oh no!
And so as we're my mom is talking to this lady, the fire department comes.
Oh no!
But eventually, the lady agrees to give my mother the schoolhouse for free, but we just had to pay to move it.
Yeah.
And that was just a whole deal in itself, relocating it.
Yeah.
It's
a building, man.
Building.
I was watching. There was a Mexican restaurant in Fort Worth a couple years ago that got literally relocated from its foundation to another spot in town, and it was wild watching it on a flatbed truck navigate through other buildings and all that. So I can't imagine.
Dude, I have so much anxiety just driving a pickup truck, let alone trying to drive an 18-wheeler with a building on top.
Yeah.
But anyways, we relocated and placed it right across from the cemetery, within maybe 40 yards of each other.
Was that a strategic move, or was that just hey, it lines up with the cemetery age, it's going to look good together? Or?
It looked good together, but also the previous owner, they said that historically there was a schoolhouse somewhere near around the cemetery, but they couldn't find it. There wasn't no remains, and we tried searching for it, and I love metal detecting when I was younger, and so I tried to find nails and stuff, but never could. So we moved it right across from the cemetery.
Okay.
And Mom, she fully restored it. She brought people out, and then she filled it with some of the coolest old antiques. A lot of my stuff in my room is from that.
Nice,
that schoolhouse. And it was just incredible. It blew the schoolhouse out of the log cabin village, out of the water. And it was just really, really awesome. But a lot of my experiences I'm going to share with you sitting around these 2 places.
Okay. What happened first at which location?
Besides the pliers story, the first instance of paranormal activity is we just finished it, and my mom had this one lady and some of my friends from school out to the schoolhouse, and they were setting it up. This one lady takes a picture of the schoolhouse, and in the picture you see a streaking orb going across, and that was the first really creepy thing. And my mom, it's just a messed up picture, but it was scary. But one of the things that my family used to do a lot when we had the property was get on our ATVs and go night riding around the property. Me, my dad, and brothers would load up all in one, and we would all be carried some type of weapon. We looked almost like those ISIS soldiers or African warlords you'd see in a picture behind a pickup truck with all
good old Toyota high gun turret on top.
So we'd drive around looking for wildlife and trespassers or poachers, and thank God we never saw a trespasser or poacher, because that person it would have gone well.
You guys probably would have stumbled upon somebody actually needing true help. And
oh man,
terrible.
But it was just fun driving around. But we would go and we would patrol a lot. And later on, I love doing that just by myself, because we didn't have a huge house on the property. It was just a 2 or 3 bedroom bunkhouse we had, and we only had one TV. So if I didn't like something we were watching on TV, I'll just take out the ATV and drive around. And when I would drive by the cemetery, there would always just be like some light left on, and just for some reason. And when my dad saw lights left on, and like he did the stereotypical dad thing, and he would get angry. It's the electricity bill, and so I'll go in and turn off the line. And another weird thing you would notice is like how the schoolhouse was, there's like a entryway with the front doors, and that way led into the main school room. However, there's two doors in that entryway, one for the girls to walk through and one for the boys. And we always,
as it should be.
Yes, as it should be. Okay?
Just kidding.
You gotta keep
Kidding. Gotta keep them separated.
Yeah. And my dad always wanted those doors closed just in case if someone snuck onto the property, if they looked through the windows, they couldn't see anything to steal. And we had a lot of people, like, since it was a cemetery, people would come try to visit it. And we'd open up the gate leading to the cemetery during the holidays and stuff, and to let people in. But like all these old people would try to break in and cut a lock and go in there.
As old people do, man. You can't be trusted. Can't be trusted. They make up their own rules.
Yeah, so we're worried that someone might break in and steal all my mom's antiques.
Let me pause it real quick, because I want to ask, did this schoolhouse, did you guys wire this up to have power?
Yeah, it had electricity.
Okay.
I don't think there's any plumbing in it, but there was air conditioning and electricity.
Okay, so it was plumbed and it had power, and you would take nightly drives, and sometimes the schoolhouse would have a light on.
Yeah, light on.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they would have the light on, and so I'd go get off the ATV, go and turn it off, and shut the door and make sure both doors were closed. But sometimes when I went in, or just like walking in when we were patrolling, I just wanted to check it. Mm-hmm. One of the doors leading into the main room would be open, but we also had this one side door that led outside that was at the back of the schoolhouse in the main room, and we always kept that locked. Mm-hmm. And we never really used it. But driving by, it would be open with the lock still out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it would be open with the lock still.
Oh, so like the deadbolt would have been
still
out,
yeah.
But the door's like wide open.
Wide open.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. And man, and that was so freaky. But the scariest story involving electricity with the schoolhouse was sometime during Thanksgiving or Christmas break, and both of our ATVs, we either had a flat tire or a battery dead. So I took my dad's feed truck. It was a stick shift, and I was learning how to drive a standard, and I pull up to the schoolhouse, and the lights are on. Okay, I parked it, and I go out to turn off lights. I turn off lights. I get back into the car. I'm trying to start the car. I'm killing it. I'm getting frustrated.
Oh, no.
I eventually started up, and I started going ahead, but I look back at my rearview mirror, and the lights are on. Right after I turn them off.
Interesting.
And that just really freaked me out, and I didn't go back in.
Do you think that was, if you could guesstimate the time it took you to get the truck started, are we talking like 5 minutes, 15?
Okay, I don't want to, reveal how bad of a driver I was, but it was like 7 minutes.
That's okay. I mean, look.
And I was like crying and praying to God, like, please God, just
start the truck,
so I don't have to call my dad to come get me. Oh, and so that was the scariest.
I will say 7 minutes in terms of like you experiencing something, that's pretty instantaneous. You just shut it off, you get to your truck, you try to start it, you drive off and look back and you're like, what? I just turned that off. That's pretty quick, man.
It was, but it scared me. And however, I didn't spend a lot of time in that area. Let me try to explain what I'm trying to say. I was around my family a lot, and we did things a lot together.
Sure. Because
we went out to the range as a family, so we're doing stuff. So I didn't wander off in that direction by myself a lot.
Okay.
And
towards the schoolhouse?
Yeah, towards the schoolhouse.
Okay.
In the cemetery, because it was about like.
After that, you stuck closer to the herd.
Like leading up to that point, I was close to the herd. So
okay.
The biggest.
Okay.
And so that time period probably was like 5 years. So
okay.
Those two big instances were like the biggest thing that happened in 5 years. When I was in college, my parents divorced.
Okay.
And it was like a long divorce. It lasted like over 3 years.
Oh man,
and,
sorry about that. It's tough. That's tough.
It was a tough time.
Yeah.
But my mom, she stayed at the house, okay, in our hometown in Fort Worth, and my dad stayed at the ranch when he wasn't doing these like kind of part-time job.
Sure.
He'd work for somebody for 3 months and be gone. And to help out with my dad, money was like tight at the time. And I felt bad for my dad because he was living out there by himself. And so I spent a lot of time there with him, and we're watching over the ranch when he wasn't there. And that's where a lot of my experience happened.
Okay.
And then it was just a really scary, just nothing, not related to paranormal, just being out there by yourself. I remember this one time, I thought I heard somebody walking around our little house we were staying at, and I'm freaking out. And I get one of our rifles, and I slowly wedge one of the windows open, and I'm like Kevin and like Home Alone movie when he has the BB gun, taking
through the dog door.
and I was like, "Hey, if anyone's out here, this is a warning." And I fired a warning shot off, and then I realized, like, after I shot, we had this front porch with a wooden railing wrapping around. I skinned the top of the wooden railing with a bullet. And I was like, oh man, dude, if my dad comes back, he's going to freak out. And so I had to fix it. But it was just extremely scary. And then also during this time period, the neighborhood was kind of like going downhill. It was just a really sketchy time. The church we had got broken into. This one story, I wasn't on the ranch at this time, but my dad, for a good while, he taught the Sunday school class for these. It was called the Golden Oldies class at our church. And it's just full of like really old people. And he left early in the morning to go to church, and this is like 4 o'clock in the morning. He's driving from Oklahoma to Fort Worth, and he realizes he left his class notes at home. So he's driving back, and he sees one of our ATVs that he normally parks in our barn backed in reverse up to the window, and then he sees people like loading stuff into the back of the ATV.
Oops.
So he calls the police, and then eventually chase them down, and they're arrested. And it was so funny because we had this German Shepherd named Jack in there. And at this point, he was like pretty old in his life, and he was just sleeping on the back of the bed. Just
best security dog ever, man.
And basically, while he was gone, he would call me and say, "Oh, I have someone coming to view the ranch and clean up everything." And within the day, I had to mow everything, clean out all the buildings like in 4 hours, which is crazy. One day, I was cleaning out the schoolhouse with one of our ranch foremen, and he was about my age. We're washing the windows with like Windex. And he finished using the Windex, and he places it down by his foot, reaches back down, pick it up, and it's gone. And he's asking, "Hey, Joel, did you take the Windex?" I said, "No, man, I didn't take it." And we're searching for it, we couldn't find it, and we're just like, okay, we'll just move on. And we started cleaning and polishing this potbelly stove that was at the center of the room. And the foreman opens up the potbelly stove to clean out the inside, and there's the Windex bottle. So none of us put it in there.
Yeah.
And that was just a crazy experience. The last big story was, it was spring break, and we finally sold the ranch to a buyer. And I was helping my dad move out all of his belongings from this shed we had right next to the cemetery. And it was a 2-story shed. And I had finished cleaning out everything on the bottom floor. And I just started moving stuff down from the top floor and stacking up. It was towards the end of the day, and I was just going to leave it on the first floor and pick it up the following morning. And I placed these 3 large plastic containers on top of each other. And I locked the door. My dad was gone, so I have the only key. I lock it, and I leave, and I come back the following morning, open up the doors, and I see that one of the containers had been separated from the stack, and the top was open. Inside, it was filled originally with these old tin lunch boxes my mom had collected, and they're all scattered all across the shed.
Wow.
And I just couldn't, I was just so scared. I couldn't tell my dad because like he's trying to sell it and he just wanted to hear all this. That was like the last thing
that you experienced over your family's history, huh? Of owning the ranch.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That's wild, man.
Yeah.
So much of your story echoes a lot of other people's experiences from similar, I would call them almost, not traits, but just styles, things that were stacked that then were pulled off, or electronic phenomena always seems to be really big and important, and who knows why these things happen across. But fantastic story, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, and the thing that kind of perplexed me was, like, I always wondered about, was the schoolhouse haunted before we moved it, or was it the spirits coming from the cemetery?
Or, yeah, being that there was a schoolhouse located prior, was it just amplifying either residual energy that left on the land, or was it providing a new beacon for new wandering souls? That's wild. Was it, before we close this out, let me ask you, was it all the time that you were out there, or was it like
all the time? Like every weekend, I was almost on a ranch during the school year, during every break, and I stayed out there for the whole summer.
Okay. But it was in terms of what you would experience, pretty infrequent.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Still wild, man. Still spine-tingling.
It was,
Still
man.
spine-tingling. Class, we're going to wrap up. We have another meeting to go to, very hush-hush, down low meeting to go to help our little podcast. But we hope that you've enjoyed our personal stories and Mr. Jackson's two tales. Well, it's about that time, I think. You want to wrap?
Let's wrap it, man.
Let's do it. So we have
some homework for you guys to do. If this episode gives you goosebumps, then press the like button, comment your thoughts, and share that eerie vibes. If you're new, don't be a stranger. Subscribe to Beyond the Bell and step into the unknown with us.
And again, we are still taking your stories. We want the spine-tingling, we want the unexplained, the paranormal. If you've had an extraterrestrial encounter or a mysterious cryptid creature sighting, we also want to hear that as well, or conspiracy theory. But here at Beyond the Bell, we're also looking for educators. So our teacher colleagues out there, you're in and day out in some of these older locations, and if something has gone strange in your classroom, we want to hear from you. So again, the links in these descriptions are below at our website. You can contact us at joel.jackson@beyondthebellpodcast.org, or go directly to our website and click the contact tab.
Finally, please help us take Beyond the Bell to new heights. Remember, this show isn't just about Zach or myself, but an entire community of paranormal enthusiasts just like you. Every donation matters to us as it aids in creating premium quality content efficiently. Visit beyondthebellpodcast.org and click on donate at the top of the page. The link is also available in the description section of this video.
And remember that all of your proceeds just go to helping us grow in technology, devices. We want to start exploring some of these places, right, Mr. Jackson? So
we do.
We need some cameras. We need some better audio equipment to get some evidence for you guys. We're just putting this out there for you all and entertainment, because we are still teachers at the end of the day. With that, I'm going to go ahead and say class dismissed.